Hi, my name is Paul Gibson, and I'm the current Director of Adult Discipleship at Westminster Presbyterian Church. This video has been created to help our Sunday school teachers become even better teachers in ways that they prepare lessons for their classrooms. So today we are going to be looking at how to prepare an effective lesson plan for the students that you will be teaching. In order to start, I would like to share with you a story. 4 years ago, a friend of mine and I were teaching a lesson about biblical friendship to a group of students at a church in Indiana. After the lesson was over with, we had an older gentleman come up to us in tears. He was telling us how thankful he was that we had the opportunity to share the lesson with him, and then he transitioned to say, "I want you to know that I haven't spoken to my best friend in 6 months." My friend and I asked him what was going on. He told us, he said, "But I want you to know this." He said, "Because of your stories and the way that I have seen God move in your story, I want to go home and I want to call my friend and I want to do whatever is necessary to work out my conflict with him." Now, when my friend and I were up on stage that day, did we have any idea that God would use us to make this man or to challenge this man to go home and to call his best friend in order to resolve whatever conflict they had? No, we didn't. But we were open to the idea of God using us to make some difference for His kingdom. And I tell you this story to encourage you to know that when you stand up in front of your classroom, you're doing more than teaching facts. You're doing more than communicating ideas. God is using you to communicate His life-changing message to the students that are under your voice, students that are hungry for truth, that are hungry for life change, and God is using you to reach out to them. So as you prepare diligently and know that God desires to use you to make a difference for His kingdom. So how do you prepare? Well, after you do the necessary Bible study to understand your passage, then you're ready to do a lesson plan. Now, the reason I emphasize this idea of necessary Bible study is that it's impossible to teach a lesson in which you do not understand the scripture you will be teaching. So know that before you sit down to do a lesson plan, proper exegesis, proper poring over a scripture in order to try to understand that scripture is required. So please make sure you have good Bible study methods. Please make sure that you're taking the time to yourself digest a scripture before you try to teach it. But after you do the necessary work as a teacher to understand it, then you can begin to prepare your lesson plan. So how do you prepare a lesson plan? Well, 3 things I encourage you to know. I encourage you to know the importance of goals. I encourage you to know the methodology of hook, book, look, and took. And I encourage you to know the importance of a good conclusion. So what's the deal with the 3 goals? Well, the 3 goals are a know goal, a feel goal, and a do goal. Before you sit down to line out methodology, before you sit down to plan out the ways that you're going to teach your students, I encourage you to sit down and write out 3 goals that you want your students to be able to meet before the class is over. The know goal, and the know goal answers this: what do you want your student to know as a result of the lesson? What do you want your student to know as a result of the lesson? The second goal is a feel goal. What do you want your students to feel as a result of the lesson? What do you want your students to feel as a result of the lesson? And the third goal is a do goal. What do you want your students to do as a result of the lesson? What do you want your students to do as a result of the lesson? Take some time, write out these 3 goals for every lesson, because they give you a bullseye and a target to aim for as you're teaching. If you do not take the time to write these goals out, the danger is that as you teach, you could lead your students anywhere, which could cause them to be very confused and to leave class with more questions than they had when they walked in. So a know goal, a feel goal, and a do goal. Now, after you establish your goals, then you can transition into this idea or this methodology of hook, book, look, and took. Well, the hook does exactly what it says it does. It hooks students. It grabs their attention so that they are ready and prepared to listen and focus on you as you teach them. Picture this. It's a busy Sunday morning. Students have just gotten out of bed or just finished with the first service. They're walking upstairs, they're talking to friends, they're eating donuts, they're drinking coffee, and they sit down. Are they ready to listen to you? Some of them are. Some of them are still distracted by their coffee, their donut, and their conversation. That is why the hook is so important. The hook is set up to grab their attention and to get them thinking about the truths of Scripture that you will be pouring over. So, for instance, here's a hook that I used recently. I was teaching on the full armor of God, and I wanted our students thinking about the full armor of God that a Roman soldier wore back in the 1st century. Well, what I did was I showed them a very short clip of Gladiator, and I asked them, tell me about the importance in your mind of the Roman soldier's armor. Short hook, no more than 5 minutes, and then we rolled into the lesson, but it grabbed their attention. Now make sure when you do the hook that whatever you use, whether it be a story, whether it be a joke or a pop culture example, make sure it ties in with your passage or scripture. So for instance, if you're doing the full armor of God, don't talk about bass fishing. Now after you do your hook, transition and actually state your goals to your students. Do not be ashamed to say, by the end of this class, guys, I want you to know this. I want you to feel this, and I want you to do this. Don't be ashamed to do that, because it helps students understand where you are going, and it helps them clear their mind as they walk down this path with you. So you do your hook, you state your goals, then you transition to the book. Now the book the book portion of the lesson plan helps students interact with the passage through reading, through class discussion, and through mini lectures. So, for instance, if we're studying Ephesians 6, I'm going to use different methods to help students dive into what the passage is actually saying. That includes reading aloud. That includes discussing what the passage is saying. That includes listing, comparing, and contrasting what the passage is saying. That includes having students listen to me as I teach a short mini lecture. The book is all about helping students digest whatever the passage is saying. So you do your hook, you state your goals, you do your book, and then you transition to the look. Now what the look does is it helps students take the truths of the passage and start digesting it into their own lives. But the look is broad and general. You're not specifically asking them about their lives. You're having them to begin, or you're asking them to begin thinking about ways that the truth of the passage apply to modern day America, or to modern day Lubbock, or to being a Christ follower in the 21st century. So for instance, a broad and general question I asked in regards to the full armor of God was this: what modern day evidence exists to support the idea of spiritual warfare? Broad and general, but it begins them thinking about, or it has them start thinking about specific application. Then, after we do the hook, after we state our goals, we do the book, we do the look, and then we transition to the final portion, which is called the took. Now, what the took does is it helps students identify specific actions they will take in order to apply the truths of the lesson. The took ties in very closely to whatever your do goal is. So, for instance, if you had a do goal of, by the end of the class, students will practice fighting spiritual battles with the knowledge and application of the full armor of God, then the took is going to be asking questions to have to encourage students to start thinking about ways that the foundation of Christ being the full armor of God helps them fight current day battles. Now I know that sounds a little complicated. Let me just say this. A question you could ask is this from a took standpoint: what spiritual battle could you possibly be fighting during this season of your life? It's no longer broad, it's no longer general, but it's getting more and more specific in helping them understand ways that Scripture can specifically apply to their lives. And then finally, after you do your hook, you do your goals, your book, your look, and your took, you wrap it all up in a conclusion. You basically go back to your goals and you walk back through your HBLT, your hook, book, look, and took, and you conclude, and you leave students leaving with the goal of them fulfilling the 3 goals that you had set out at the beginning of the class. So, there you go. The importance of 3 goals, the hook, book, look, and took, and then the importance of a conclusion. Thank you.